In the early 90s, I was homeless. I was a homeless addict living in a pickup truck.
Welcome, everybody, to the Freedom Real Estate Podcast. And today we have a very special episode for you. Normally, our guests are a little bit younger or a little bit earlier in their journey, but today we have a real seasoned veteran. This man has went from one extreme to the other, and we mean from overcoming addiction and homelessness to becoming multi-millionaire level investor. Today we have Toby Fisher, and we would love to hear your story.
Well, thanks for having me. You know, when
Absolutely.
you say that, I have to remind myself that really is me, because there's two realities here.
Mm-hmm.
So I think back, my very first real estate deal, and I assume that's a lot of the audience here, was in 1996. It was a foreclosed auction. I lived in the basement for 5 years as I fixed it up. I lived in the basement because I really didn't have any money, and I started off with a book from Robert Allen. If anybody remembers Robert Allen, How to Buy Property with No Money Down.
That's old school.
That's old school. Carlton sheets, and the strategy was you would get an FHA loan, you would buy really cheap, you would use credit cards. At one point, I had several $100,000 in credit cards I was juggling to buy property with, and so that's how I started in real estate. But what you alluded to earlier is the part that's surreal to me sometimes, and yet very true. And I have the pictures to prove it, and some of the records to prove it. Is in the early 90s, I was homeless. I was a homeless addict living in a pickup truck. And my first attempt, so very early on in my life, I grew up in a world where we would party with the family. I mean, we would do drugs and party with our parents and whatnot. It was to now it seems unreal, but at the time it was exactly what we did. And
Where did you grow up?
In Woburn, Mass.
So very local.
Very local. That's right. And I don't believe everybody's parents were doing drugs with their children and hanging out at parties with minors, and I don't think that was the norm. It just seemed to be the norm with the people I ran to. And I think of some of the people with nicknames like Gumby and Snake, and I think I was actually particularly young for this crowd. And I remember my first 12-step meeting was around 15 years old.
Wow.
Wow. I know. I think about this in the early 80s, and I knew that even back then, I knew that I had a problem, because in my growing up, there was never, I'm not going to do this. It was, I was hell-bent. I was just on a mission to self-destruct and do whatever. And I think about that and how lucky I am. I didn't get clean for another 10 years after that. Multiple detoxes, drunken and driving, a few other incidences, and I didn't get clean and sober until the early 90s.
And how many folks probably that ran in your circle that never got clean or never got out of it?
Well, most of them are dead. Or there were those that just kind of smoked pot or drank beer and had maybe a little bit of an issue, and they seemed to do okay. And then there were those of us that did the hard drugs, and there's virtually none of us left. I mean, one of my closest running partners was a guy named Snake, or his real name was Kenny, and he, he's long dead. He's long dead from HIV many years ago. I saw him in the 80s smoking crack, living in a tool shed in Miami, and he died shortly after. And by the grace of God and walk, and I believe in that God really had a play in this. I somehow didn't get HIV, I didn't get killed, and I'm here to talk about it. And I think that was part of the real estate. It ties into the real estate. So after being a couple years clean and sober, still not necessarily living a clean life, still not hanging out with the best people, but after 10 years of trying to get clean, I finally had figured out how to put some time together through detoxes and halfway houses. And I had realized there was an awareness I came to that left to my own devices, I lead to self-destruction. I would hang out with the wrong people. I wouldn't be aware of what I was doing. And I had made a decision. There was just a decision. I picked up a criminal charge, clean and sober. I'm explaining to my probation officer with a 5-year suspended sentence about, oh, I know what I'm doing. I'm clean and sober. And he looked at me and he goes, you actually concern me more that you were sober when you did this. I would rather hear you were drunk. That makes you more dangerous. And I'm now worried. And I thought, what an ass. And then as I drove home from that, I thought, oh my God, he is so right. I am out of control. So there was an epiphany I had. And the epiphany was that left to my own devices, I gravitate towards self-destruction. But I had a question I asked, and the question was, well, what if I focused on good? Like, what if I just purposely focused on good? And that was around 1994-ish. And that one question, I think, changed my life, because that led me to Tony Robbins. That led me to Robert Allen. That led me, okay, how can I use all this energy, all my character defects in a way that isn't going to destroy me and the world around me?
So before real estate, change your environment.
I had to change my environment. I had to get out of homelessness. And then even then, it was a couple years later that I was clean and sober, but I wasn't living a clean life. And because of that, I picked up a significant criminal charge, clean and sober, explaining this to my probation officer with this 5-year suspended sentence.
So Toby, let me ask you this. Have you ever read this amazing book, Peaks and Valleys?
I have not.
Fantastic read. It's only 60, 70 pages, very, very small. But in there, they talk about how life are peaks and valleys, right? And for you to truly feel a peak, you really have to feel the deep valley, right? So let me ask you this. Are you thankful that you felt the valley so early on in your life that you could really envision the peak and kind of go in the other side of the spectrum?
I mean, I certainly am now. I mean, I am truly blessed. I am really aware of what the possibilities. So yes, I am grateful. I will say it's a little bit of a game of Russian roulette. You know, I believe I was lucky. I also believe that part of this is divine intervention. I truly believe that God, I'm not the most religious person, but I believe that I'm lucky for a reason. I wasn't just like, there is a purpose, there is a mission. It took me some years to come to this. So yes, I am truly grateful not to be strung out, living in a pickup truck, freezing my ass off in the middle of December, having enough money to buy drugs, but not putting enough money in the car so I'd be cold. Like, I don't have that.
So you brought us up to the point where, you know, you had a tough childhood, you had an addiction, you were working to fix it. You found all these gurus, these development gurus that could really teach you the mindset to be successful. So that was in the 90s. What happened from the 90s until today? Because you're obviously a way different man than that person meeting that probation officer.
Yeah, it is true. And years later, I actually saw him, and you know, we had a nice conversation. But in any event, I bought my first property in 1996. It was a foreclosed auction, and back in those days, they actually had real auctions. I mean, in Massachusetts, I think it was Paul Saperstein with one of the auctioneers for anybody, and there was a couple of them, and they actually real auctions. You would show up on the sidewalk
in person with a gavel.
Well, they didn't necessarily use a gavel; they would use the hands. But you would really be on a sidewalk buying property, and that I haven't seen that in many years in Massachusetts, and I think that has to do with real estate laws and tenant laws, and it's just a pain in the neck. But I bought my first house at auction. It was a complete mess, but it's what I could afford. I got an FHA loan. I was making $11 an hour, working overnight shift at a group home for the chronically ill. And that's what I did. I got an FHA loan. I lived in the basement. There was an illegal unit in the basement. It was a 2-family with my illegal unit in the basement. I moved in the basement. And I really focused on, my original strategy was I wanted to buy properties in Waltham, which was a pretty funky town at that time, but I had an idea that it would come up. Back then it was a funky town. So my strategy back then was to buy really cheap properties all near each other so I could walk my lawnmower around the block. So I had all the properties within a couple blocks of each other, and they were pretty beat up. And I ended up with, I don't know, maybe over 5 or 6 years, I ended up with maybe half a dozen properties, and those properties appreciated quite a bit. I mean, that was the beautiful things. I had bought properties cheap. I had lived cheap. I had taken all this energy and put it towards following this book by Robert Allen. And I was, let's say, humble enough to actually follow the instructions. I mean, there wasn't YouTube. There wasn't, I don't remember, they may have been investment groups. All I remember is I had this book by Robert Allen and it had these tapes by Carlton Sheets. And I just did what they said.
Well, I think it's funny because so many people think reading 100, 200, 300 books is going to get you the knowledge you need. But a lot of times, all the knowledge you need is in one book. And the real thing you have to do is actually implement the advice, right? And I hear time and time and time again, people will learn and learn and learn. Few people will take action and implement what they learn, right?
Or even just implement one book instead of implementing 1% out of 30.
Yeah. One thing, and I learned this in GoBundance, the group that me and Toby are a part of, is, when you read a book, it's extremely important when you're done with that book to have 3 big takeaways and have one thing that you actually implement in your life. Because if you just read for reading's sake, it's not going to really have the meaningful impact that you intended it to have.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And by the way, going back to my personality, I've learned whatever my character defects are, my obsessive compulsive nature. And I think a lot of us investors are. I mean, we obsess about it. We think about it, all the time, right? It's like a game. It's exciting. It's stressful. We like it. I really enjoyed what I was doing, and I started off fixing my own properties. That's how I started. And as I got
same, that's awesome.
Oh yeah, it was hard. I repointed many foundations in the middle of the night, regutted this,
But it teaches you an appreciation, and it really bonds you with your own work. So I feel like that's actually an important step, especially when you're getting started.
I didn't know another way. And I didn't have anybody. There wasn't anybody that I knew. I knew a couple people at real estate. I asked them some questions. As it went on, I ran into, and you may have heard the name, a guy named David Lindo. And David Lindo was about my age. He used to play in a band at the Channel in Boston. I used to drink in the Channel in Boston. And he had hundreds and hundreds of units. So if you know who he is, he got much bigger, and I think he's retired. But in any event, we're the same age. I don't think he's any smarter than me, but he has way more units. And I'm like, okay, what did you do? And he had us, I took one of his classes, and then we got bigger. So we scaled up to, 100 unit deal.
So take us through that. How did you go from smaller houses and multifamilies to that 100 unit deal?
So at that point, I had already started to figure out there was investment groups. So I already figured out. So I had the multifamilies in Waltham. I had a couple larger properties in Western Massachusetts. So I had muddled my way up to maybe 40 units, give or take.
Mm-hmm.
And
with all your own cash, without partners.
Without partners.
That's amazing.
Bank loans. Credit cards.
And this was over a period of how long? I'm just trying to put this in perspective.
This was 10 years.
10 years.
Okay.
Okay. So like 4 units a year, which is very reasonable. The slow and steady path. Sorry, continue.
Well, that was the guys I knew. There was like, oh, how do you buy properties? Well, I bought a couple multifamilies every couple of years. And, over the time I built appreciation. I moved a little bit faster than them. It wasn't until I was probably 10 years in, I started meeting people that were scaling, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to myself, well, their way certainly seems better. And I'm stubborn, by the way. I did not follow the instructions. People told me very early on, as I started to meet people who had maybe not even as many years of experience as me, but had more property than me. They said, throw away your tools. I still struggle with that. I struggled with that. And it was the best advice they ever gave me. I should have thrown away all my tools, because everybody knows I'm going to pick up my tools and it's going to sidetrack me.
You bring up a really good point, Toby. And I scaled very quickly in 4 or 5 years. And I think one of the main reasons for that is because I am inept when it comes to fixing anything. I can't even do a light bulb correctly.
Right.
I think that's my strength, because it forced me to delegate.
It's a double-edged sword, right? Our greatest strength is our greatest weakness, right? My greatest strength is that I had this kind of obsessive compulsive issue. I had figured out how to channel that energy towards something positive. My greatest weakness is I was stubborn and I only could see the way that I could do it. But I did my first 100-unit deal in South Carolina. It was I think a great pick, bought in 2007. And a few of the things there, I did not follow advice, but I did a ton of homework, and we don't have a crystal ball. And this has been a very valuable lesson. So I had done everything, quote, right, more to scale, following kind of more of the more sophisticated investors. And by 2008, it was a disaster. It was really, really bad. And
that was that your first deal that you raised money from investors, or
yes.
Did you? Okay,
that was my first deal I raised any money from investors. And the first year was great. I mean, I took that property from average performing to outstanding, and then we came into 2008, and we had a couple issues going on in Greenville, South Carolina. It was not just the economy. It was these markets that tend to be the last to appreciate, which that was Greenville's well known now, but it wasn't so well known then. We had a lot of issues, a lot of new development that came to market, and now I'm competing with new development. I mean, it used to be, it's $400 cheaper than the A class, and now I'm $100 cheaper than the A class. So now I'm competing with brand new construction. There were lots of new construction or repositions that went bankrupt, so the new buyer had a different price point I'm competing with. And my lesson for that is I really did do all my homework to the best of my ability. I asked a lot of questions, and we don't have a crystal ball.
So that's just bad luck?
Listen, 2008 was terrible. I mean, it was really, my rent roll there was 36. I had it up to 36 grand at the top, more average around 34 grand a month. And it went to 18 grand a month in about 3.5 months. Wow. It was brutal. And I wasn't the only one. I mean, the Boston market stayed relatively stable, but if you were in like Arizona, Greenville, Texas, Florida, Vegas. Was it
just people leaving, or some people not paying their rents, people losing their jobs?
People not paying their rents, people leaving. It was difficult. I mean, again, Boston, I think, as I got more spread out, Boston, it was a small condensed market, so we didn't suffer too much in Boston. But you talk to anybody who owned property in Florida, Phoenix, South Carolina, Texas, that bought it in 2007, they're probably all going to tell you the same story that I'm telling you. It was tough. The world shifted very, very quickly.
Yeah, when it comes to the New England markets, everybody always talks about how, it's tough to build, tenant friendly laws. Like, they always put the downside associated with it, but the upside with our markets, like you alluded to, it's so insulated, right? Yeah. Like, it's hard to build. There's extremely high demand. The institutions here are world-renowned institutions that won't go anywhere, right? It's like, so I personally, like you said, everything has their strengths and their weaknesses. I view New England very much in a strength position, and I think the investing community as a whole very much views New England in a weakening standpoint from my perspective.
Well, to your point, I mean, everything's a double-edged sword. I mean, the thing about the Boston market or the Metro Boston, you're really not building 300 units unless you're knocking something down. That wasn't true in South Carolina, Florida, Arizona. People were throwing up hundreds and hundreds of units, and then the next thing you know, I have my B minus C plus class property competing with new construction. And but here's some of the other lessons to that. So I think successful investors, if you're good at, I use the term honey badger. If you ever want to watch a cool video, just Google honey badger on YouTube, and it's this picture of this ferocious animal that will eat bees and eat snakes and do whatever it needs to do to survive.
And never gives up either.
Never gives up. And I think, here I am now, we're 12 years into investing. I've been clean and sober for a while. I've had some good results. I had some faith that I don't know what to do, but I'm not going to stick my head in the sand. And a lot of investors stuck their head in the sand. I'll give you an example. I remember calling up my bank and said, listen, I got a problem. I can't pay the mortgage here. I don't know what to do. And the secretary says, the president wants to meet with you. We want you to come in. So I go in there and I think, this is not good, right? The president wants to meet with me. This was a small regional bank, so this was not a small loan. And he's really nice to me. And I just stopped the meeting. And I'm like, okay, I don't understand what's happening here. I'm not paying you and you're being really polite and professional. Like, what's going on? He chuckled and he goes to me, you're calling me back. I have so many loans out there, not even calling me back. you're here, you're willing to talk to me. And it was just a really powerful lesson that, like, doing the right thing, even though I didn't know what to do, and even though I was in trouble, I just think it was the only beacon I could go. And other people were disappearing. They were folding shop. They were trying to hide money. And I just decided, look, I'm in. I'm all the way in. And that all worked out. I eventually, it took a number of years. I went back and got a W-2 job. And I did sort that out, and I ended up whole. We didn't make a great amount of money there, but we ended up whole. It was very difficult. 2008, not only was I facing financial ruins, my father died. This was just a horrible year. This was like the dark year, okay? My father died, then my mother died, then my grandmother died, and then the woman I was engaged to, who I loved dearly at the time, she died. So between June of 2008 and Valentine's Day of 2009, all those people died and my business was upside down. And it was, I mean, I learned a couple things. Number one, I definitely was a honey badger. Number two, I became a millionaire when I was 40, and then by a couple years later, I was negative. I don't even know a negative million. I don't know how to value that, right? And I learned something that was really valuable for me. The quality of my person isn't defined by my money. The quality of my life was defined by my money. But like I just had gotten some ethics and some beacon, like, okay, what is the next right thing to do? This situation sucks so bad, but what's the next right thing to do? And I just kept on doing the next right thing.
So Toby, let me ask you this. Many people in your situation with a history of drugs and homelessness, if that happened to them, they would have reverted back to their old life, right? So first of all, why didn't you do that? And second of all, like, what practical tips did you learn during your personal development that helped you kind of stay in the right track and kind of keep that boat afloat?
So, well, first of all, by this point, now we're in 2008, 9, 10. So we're, coming near, 14 years in the business and 16 years sober, whatever, something like that. Anyhow, number one is I built a strong program. I mean, I'm in 12-step. It's no big secret. I mean, I recently started becoming more public, but people who know me privately certainly know that I'm in recovery. I had a really strong 12-step program. I had people coming by my house, bringing me food. I had a lot of people helping me out. And I really do believe this. When you read whatever books they are, you read a lot of these really successful, whether it's Tony Robbins, whoever, they talk about not just making money, but living a life of purpose and value. And I had done that for so long. And again, remember, I started this not because I was a good person. I was just trying to stay out of jail. And, I figured, okay, what I'm doing isn't working. Let's try to focus on positive. And what I found out by actually following the advice, even though I didn't follow all the advice, I didn't throw away my tools, I lived a principle-centered life. I was an honest person with integrity, and I had built a bunch of friends, and I had built a reserve. I didn't really have a good reserve financially, but emotionally I had a reserve, and I would be lying to you. I didn't think about using drugs. In fact, when my fiance passed away, the first thing I did, she had these pills called Oxycontin. While being an ex-drug addict, those weren't in existence when I got clean. Those were new. And my first thought in my head was, I better flush those right now before I think differently. And that's exactly what I did.
That's awesome.
I didn't wait 2 seconds. It was, they probably were, I don't even know. It might have been worth $1,000. I hear they're really good pills, and I wasn't going to wait until maybe I felt differently. It was the same idea, and the principle is I wasn't going to wait until the bank foreclosed on me. I called them up and said, hey, I have a problem. I wasn't going to wait till I picked up the pills. Dave Linder used to say, kill the monster when they're small.
So being proactive, is that something you learned earlier on, or is this something that you developed over the years?
Being proactive for good, I learned throughout the years. Being proactive listen, any good addict is very proactive in figuring out how to steal and do whatever we need to do what we got to do. Being proactive, like as you said, like I would literally read a book and there would be a sentence that would pop out and I go, that's what I need to do. And I don't know who told me, like I can attribute some of my comments to other people, like kill the monster while they're small, make your next best choice, do the right thing.
Would you say that'd be your superpower? That and resilience?
I think so. I think it's you know what I think it is? I think it's resilience. And while I have not followed the instructions perfectly, I have followed instructions pretty damn well. I really have. I've really picked up a book and I go, okay, I just have to do what this other person said. Look, if you want to know how to own, and I don't know where you are, Andrew, I think you're 50, 100, hundreds of units. If you want to know how to own hundreds of units in this area, I should listen to you. Right?
Yeah. I mean, you bring up a lot of good points. And I think one of the main threads throughout your story is developing trustworthiness, right? People have helped you time and time and time again because you have proved yourself trustworthy in the form of the 12-step program, in the form of the lender, having your back when you couldn't make your mortgage payments, right? And then to your point, and you did this early on as well, you got to model other people doing what you want to do, right? You found somebody with hundreds of multifamily units at your age, and you're like, oh crap, this guy's no smarter than me. I just got to copy what he does on a daily basis, and I can repeat the formula. I can create the same success pattern. So, I mean, I took the same exact path when I went on my journey. I got a mentor, John Babacci, and he really crafted my ability to manage hundreds of units, like you alluded to.
Right. To continue on the story, I think there was different evolutions that going on. So I came out of 2008 and 9 and 10, and I had my W-2 job, I think until 2013, because I had to go back. I went back to work to try to, rather than me trying to hide money, I just tried to do the right thing. And it was difficult. And then I remember in 2000, I want to say it was 12, maybe 2012, I had kind of, it was hard to find a job in 2009 and 10, but I found a job, then I found a better job. And then sometime along the way, I got invited in by my boss, and he looked at me and says, Toby, I think you'd be happier not being here. And I looked and I'm like, oh, crap. And I'm being let go. And I was being let go because I was fried. I really wasn't doing the job well. I might have had resentment at the time. And again, this goes back to, I think there is some divine intervention. I think we all have it. What had happened by that time, and I didn't even know it, is I was going so fast, so hard to keep my ship afloat that I hadn't cashed my paycheck in months. I didn't need the job anymore. My business was already back on track. And when I got let go, I had my tail between my leg, and I looked at it and goes, my check hasn't even moved this bank account in months. So I had worked my way out of the cash flow mess that I was in. And I was let go, I believe, because my boss he didn't know my story, but he certainly could tell whatever was going on, I was fried and I wasn't doing what I needed to do. And I just believe God also said, you're good. Take a break, man. And as I came out of that last resurrection, and I really do, I think I've been resurrected. I'm not Christian, but I feel like I've been resurrected at least twice. Okay. I got clean. Then I was clean and almost broke. And really, if you ask me, like, okay, all those people die in your life, you lose your money. As a man or as anybody who's an investor, that's like a huge ego thing. Like, I'm a millionaire. I quit my job when I was 40. I'm so cool. Now, I'm flat ass broke. I'm negative $1 million, and I'm working again this crappy job. And I think that was the moment that I realized, like, I didn't have that ego feeling. Like I didn't like being broke, but I didn't feel I was less of a human being because of it. And that was a real profound thing. But when I came back out of this, I took a much more conservative approach, and I got more focused on goal setting, on contribution, on mission, on purpose. Like, okay, how much money do I need? What do I want my life to look like? And this, Andrew, you can call me, like, here I am, because I don't have a schedule.
Yeah.
And that was part of, so I did a lot of vision work. So I transitioned a lot of my properties to these triple net deals, which are not sexy investments. So if you want to get rich, they're probably not the right deal. But if you don't want to have phone calls, they're great. So I repositioned a lot of my portfolio very consciously to fit my purpose and to fit like sitting down and journaling and you know, like, what do I want the next 5, 10, 20 years to look like? What do I want my family to look like? How much money do I need? I mean, how much money do you need? I don't know. I mean, for me, I think north of 10 is great. Now, probably is going to be north of 20, which is great too.
Yeah, I totally agree. I've actually utilized the Vivid Vision, great book, to reverse engineer the dream life to do exactly what you said. Your story really kind of had a lot of similarities to Artem's story, right? I think Artem, you had a very similar story right now where you just got laid off from your job.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You just reached financial freedom. And to your point, like to Toby's point, the paycheck's really not moving the needle at this point. So like,
yeah,
I just see similarities on that front, you know?
Yeah, I actually felt that exactly what you said. The initial shock of, oh, I'm getting laid off. Did I do something bad? My ego's hurt. But literally about 1 to 2 days later, I'm like, wow, this is actually the biggest blessing I've had. I mean, life literally happens for you, not to you.
Right.
And I was like, man, I'm actually very grateful that this happened. Also, similar story. I still have an issue with sometimes fixing my own property just because I can do it better and faster than calling somebody. But I'm trying to learn the same exact lessons too. But I do want to change gears a little bit because something that I would like to pick your brain about. A lot of our guests on this podcast, and a lot of this podcast is geared towards younger investors or people a little bit earlier on their journey. Take us a little bit through what were some of the challenges you had at the beginning levels of your investing journey, but also at the intermediate level and at the higher level where you have multiple hundreds of units, and what kind of lessons did you have to learn at each of those levels to overcome those challenges? Because a lot of us don't even know what it's like to own multiple hundreds of units, but clearly those problems can't be the same as a guy that's just buying his second deal.
So I'm going to say this. One of the things that served me really well, and I didn't figure it out right away. So I initially started out, I'm just going to focus on doing good because focus on good sticks me with 5-year jail sentences for doing stupid things. And so I didn't start off with all the information, all the YouTube. And maybe it was there, but I didn't know about it. I will tell you absolutely, doing vision work, doing purpose work, I don't care where you are, it makes it so much easier. In my early times, I was just focused on, it was a lot of ego. I wanted to become a millionaire. I knew that the pain of going to, get into trouble and my history was just a mess. So I was really motivated by, you talk about the carrot and the stick. That was really the stick, you know what I mean? Initially. As I evolved, being more motivated by purpose and clear direction was better. And there's no reason that someone starting off can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
So what does that mean? There's all kinds of books on vision. I really like Jack Canfield's has some really good work on setting goals and vision. 20, there's so many of them, and it really is. So I think that's one big thing. I think you got to be a honey badger. Listen, this world we're in now has a bunch of excuses and stories. Oh, it's not like, the one thing when I was going under.
Don't even start there.
When I was going under, you never heard from me, okay? Oh, it's not my fault. The government's, I might have been pissed at a moment, but I didn't, my success wasn't someone else's fault. My lack of success, my problems. That was a very different mentality. I think that, if you know Wyatt, who's in GoBundance, he's pretty successful. He had a very difficult business time. And I just asked him, because I'm curious, when that all happened to you, who did you blame? And he looked at me really confused. And this could be anybody who's successful. And the reason he was confused because he didn't blame anybody. It doesn't matter how bad. It doesn't matter if your building burnt down, somebody stole it from you, terrible things happen, you have a bad tenant. Walking around being a victim and blaming other people doesn't accomplish anything. So I think that is always important.
That's a generational challenge, is personal ownership. I mean, Andrew and I, we have issues getting a plumber to do plumbing work when we're paying him, and we still have to talk him into it.
I know.
Toby, you bring up a lot of good points, and I think the main point kind of that I think resonated with me was I've learned more on my failures than my successes.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's where you really figure out, are you a honey badger or are you going to make up excuses? Right. Are you going to choose your own destiny? Are you going to create your own destiny? Or are you going to let, the world create your own destiny for you? Right. So I'm right there with you. And, I think, and one of the biggest lessons in one of my favorite books, Rich Dad Poor Dad, is, don't ask why this is happening. Ask, how can I fix this? What can I do? Because it just keeps your mind going to come up with solutions, right? Because ultimately, there's a million solutions to any problem, right? And the only thing holding you back from finding the answer is your openness and your creativity to find that answer.
So, so in 2010, 11, I'm not sure the exact year, I went to some, and I think it was a Rich Dad, Poor Dad seminar, not with Robert Kiyosaki, somebody trying to sell his products. And I believe it was there that a man said in front of the audience, I have a visualization and a bold declaration for you. So here's what it was. The question is, and you can play this. This is exactly how it was given to me, and I did it, and I'm going to tell you how it worked. He goes, if you had $1 million, who would you donate it to? And a single $1 million donation. And the answer to my question, something around homelessness, addiction, I wasn't entirely clear. I didn't have that clear. How much would you need to create to be able to donate $1 million? And I said $10 million. Okay. And it was actually 11 million with $1 million liquid. So I had some really clear metrics on that. And by when would you donate it? And for me, it was going to be age 65. And now go on and make a bold declaration. So that's what I did. I didn't tell everybody in the world, but I told some people who I felt I respected. And I was broke when I came up this. I was worth a negative $1 million. So this idea of me donating $1 million was absurd. But I believed enough of this man, who I don't believe would be sitting in front of a seminar room if he didn't have a clue. So I followed those instructions. And as time went on, this vision, because the idea was you create your vision around contribution, which drags, in my case, $10 million with it. So it's not about me. It's about something bigger than me. So when I have an excuse, it's about this shelter for people who aren't served. And it can be for whatever anybody wants. But the idea is that the contribution is your why. But you want to create how much do you need, because it's about abundance for yourself. So right around when I was about 52, 53, I hit my 10 million. And I got to be honest with you, I lied for a couple of years. I downplayed my numbers because I didn't want to give up the $1 million. Because I had told people once I hit 10 million, 11 million, I'm going to give away this $1 million. And somewhere around, I'm 58 now, so maybe around 55, I finally came to, you know what, this is silly. I said I was going to do it. I didn't say it was cash. So as I got clearer and clearer, it just kind of manifested. So I ended up having a property that I donated worth $1,075,000. I had no loans on it. I made 50 grand a year. It was easily worth $1 million. And I found a local charity that was willing to use it to build a shelter for women and children. And going back to addiction, it's tough for anybody to get clean and sober, but it was tough for women. I just think it was because they were sexualized, they were victimized, they might have had kids. Guys, they go to jail for a year or they go to treatment or they got a kid. Yeah, we may have feelings about it, but my experience that for women, it was just much tougher. And so I found this charity that's willing to do it. It took about another year to put it together. And I remember about a week before I'm signing the papers. The name of the charity is Middlesex Human Services in Waltham, Massachusetts. And the place, they're rehabbing right now and putting on an extra floor to make it really big. So it'll serve 8 families. About a week before I'm going to close and I'm talking to the president, I just told him the truth. He didn't really know my history. He says, it's really funny. I'm helping build a shelter for women and children in the same town I got sober in the early 90s. He goes, where'd you go? I went, the old state hospital, Middlesex. He goes, Toby, that's where we started our business. And I'm so confused.
Oh, that's awesome. Full circle.
Wait a second. You're a charitable organization. That was a state hospital. They subcontracted the services to us. So you tell me that. I mean, look,
what are the odds?
You could say that's a coincidence, or I've made a choice, that I really do believe we all have this. Like you got let go in your job and then you realize, okay, that's a blessing. Like I am donating $1 million property to the place I went through my last detox. And I swear I did not know that. Why would I know there was a nonprofit? And he goes, so no, look it up. We started our charity there. And I think that's
awesome.
And that's one of the reasons I'm here with you, Andrew, because I think that as I kind of did some more vision work this year, I think it's important for me to share that story for someone who maybe is struggling, maybe feels homeless, maybe doesn't quite have $1 million to donate, but okay, how do I do that? I'm going to tell you, it's so much easier to create money when you got a reason. And I also believe at that same time, the synergies, like I attracted a really big deal at the exact same time, but it's complete coincidence. So I closed the property, the donation, gave away the property on June 5th. And by the end of the summer, I basically tripled that in equity in another deal I put together.
Oh, very nice.
So you tell me, coincidence or not? But that's exactly what the guy said to me at the Rich Dad Poor Dad seminar. He goes, this will work if you do it. And I can't say I fully believed him, but I was willing to follow the instructions.
That's actually literally exactly what got Andrew to quit his job, is similar situation.
Yes. You want to go in that story?
A little bit, yeah. Tell us about it. On stage, all the same exact pressure. You got called out at a seminar.
No, I mean, first of all, I just want to mention that's an absolute beautiful story that the place that helped you get sober created the abundance for them to get that home down the road, right? For those 8 families. Yeah, I mean, my story, I don't know if it's similar, but it's definitely, it involves GoBundance, our beautiful organization. I went to the Austin Entrepreneurial Summit a couple of years ago, probably I think a year and a half ago 2 years ago at this point. And Matt King, the CEO of GoBundance, he was facilitating the whole conversation. We were doing some table work, and he had us go around the table and mention, what is one thing you have to do that's holding you back from you achieving your dreams, right? And mine was quit my W-2. At that point, I had a thriving private equity real estate firm. I was at I had 100 units at that point. I was starting to build up a little bit of a track record. And he passed the mic around. So I got up and I explained, my one thing holding me back is quitting my W-2. So he looks at me, he's like, all right. He's like, when are you going to quit your W-2? And I'm like, I don't know. He's like, you're going to quit it by this date. And if you don't, we're going to shave that beautiful beard of yours. And I'm like, you ain't freaking shaving this beard of mine. Right. And then it proceeded by 300 people in the room chanting, quit your job, quit your job, quit your job. And lo and behold, 2 to 3 months later, I ended up quitting my job, similar to what you said, where it's like, I said I was going to do this. Like, I was scared. I was honestly scared. I've never been more scared in my life, but I said I was going to do it, and I did it. And to Artem's point, I've never felt more freed and more liberated, and it was honestly one of the best decisions of my life.
I believe it's alignment, Andrew. Like, you're in alignment with your purpose, your beingness. Like you're congruent with who you are. I mean, I think a lot of us, it's a human thing to be fake, to be false, to be, I need this fancy car or whatever, this story that we tell ourselves. I mean, I'm going to give up my job and I don't know what I'm going to do. That's scary. And you got rewarded. And it's not a tit for tat, by the way. I do not believe it's a tit for tat. I believe when we take a chance like that, we're given another opportunity. So I don't believe I donated $1 million and I created 3. That was a tit for tat. I just believe God gave me, he said, okay, now you have another opportunity. What are you going to do now?
Totally. Absolutely. Beautiful story. So on the Freedom Real Estate podcast, we like to kind of understand what people's definition of freedom is. So Toby, could you just go over what does freedom mean to you?
So this came to me, pretty much everything I say, by the way, I can't imagine much. I have an original thought. Okay. I take him somebody else. So Dave Lindo, for those that know him, he said, I want to do what I want, when I want, where I want, with whom I want. And that stuck with me. And so when I came out of my second resurrection, I really focused not as much on building the cash flow or the equity, but structuring my business to be a stronger risk profile so I wasn't stuck in the mess like I was, but also to free up my time. And so for me, I want to do what I want when I want. I really, and this because we have a common GoBundance person. He emails me in the morning, hey, we got to get together for lunch. And I go, great, what are you doing in a couple hours? And he goes, well, I can make that work. That's my life. I've gotten really good. I would be lying to you. I did not throw away my tools. Because once in a while I did a job, we were clearing out a warehouse and I wanted to go cut trees. So I cut down like 20 trees, but I just cut them down and walked away. I just want to cut the tree down. I don't want to pick up the tree. So I do get sucked in sometimes, but I'd say 99% of the time I am exactly where I want to be. Next week I go to Florida, then I'll be in Breckenridge, then I'll be in Tampa, then I'll be in Hawaii and, wherever. So I go wherever. And
that's awesome.
I think that you got to put your time in and build the equity and build the system. I don't think a person first starting out is going to be able to achieve that. But with a clear enough vision, you go, okay, that's what I want. So I resurrected myself from 2010-ish until, probably about 2018, 19, I was pretty solid. So then when COVID came, by the way, I was pretty solid.
So how long did it take you to transition from working many hours in your business to being much more hands-off and being able to travel and be the boss of your own day?
I think once I got let go from that job, by the way, I mean, look, if the world falls apart, you got to do what you have to do. And I was really stuck in maybe I didn't have to go back to a W-2 job. Maybe I could have found another way, but I muscled through it. But I would say by 2015, I was pretty much in control. By 2018, 19. So in 2018, I had decided I want my business to be in, remote. So I'm doing a lot of property management, right? And people say, oh, something's broken. We need you to come by. We want to meet you for lunch. It was always bankers want to meet you for lunch, whatever you want to do. Everybody wants to meet. And I'd say, listen, I'm really busy. Why don't we do a phone call, do a Zoom, send me a picture of the repair. And that was people weren't that thrilled about it. Well, COVID came. Now it's easy. But I was so when COVID came, and is it serendipitous? So I would say by 2018, 19, I was there. But I was really very conscious that I wanted the absolute freedom to do what I want, when I want, where I want, and that's not my quote.
Nice. And so what does your day-to-day look like now? What is your average day? How many hours do you spend working? How many hours do you spend traveling, leisure, enjoying your family?
I really do whatever I want to do. But I do enjoy some working. I like some tedious stuff. Sometimes I get involved in training my son. So I'll usually wake up at 7 a.m. I might do a couple hours on the computer. Then I'll go to the gym. Sometimes I'll be at the gym for 4 hours. Now I'll be lying to say I'm working out for 4 hours because I could be on the phone yapping, right? And then I could be hiking. I've hiked a lot of like Mount Aconcagua, Mount Kilimanjaro, Mount Everest Base Camp. Those are places. We're going to do the Utah river trip. There's no phone. I'm not going to have a phone. I'm going to be in the middle of the wilderness, right? And
your business has to keep running itself.
It does, and I've hopefully built enough systems that it does run itself. So my day varies. So the next week we go to Florida because we're sick of this weather and we should have left earlier. But then I'm going to go skiing in Breckenridge. So that's awesome. My day. It's all over the map. I've been to all the continents. This year I'm going to complete all the states. I have Utah. No, not Utah. Idaho, that's where the river trip is, North Dakota, and Hawaii. That's it.
Right. All right. So as we wrap up, I want to do a couple of rapid fire questions here. If you were to sit with your younger self, let's say when you were just beginning, homeless, drug addicted, what would you tell yourself? What kind of advice would you love to have received at that point?
So the advice that I would have given myself, that I did eventually give myself, is to surrender to the fight. Just surrender. Man, I'm so powerless over it. To just listen to somebody else, and I don't need, just turn my will over to somebody else who knows better than me what I'm doing to do.
The Surrender Experiment. You read that book?
I have not.
Amazing book. Amazing book, and that's what it all talks about. You have to be receptive. You can't fight it, right? You have to be receptive. You have to surrender yourself to destiny, to the world, to your ambitions, right? So it's a great book. Definitely check it out.
On that note, a little bit more. On that note, speaking a little bit more practically, a lot of the times you spend so much energy resisting doing the thing that you have to do that you might as well just do it, even though it's harder up front. But that's what you got to do to get through the journey and get to the next level.
Totally.
On that note, what are some of your favorite books that had the most impact on you? They could be common, or they could be a little bit more niche off the
Well,
beaten
we
path?
know that Robert Allen's No Money Down had a big impact. I think the book is probably outdated. Tony Robbins' Unleash the Power is a phenomenal book. And when I read the book, I didn't just read the book, I did the exercises. Jack Canfield's book, he has some really good goal books. You know, if you I think he has the most mainstream kind of like strategy. I mean, a lot of this is repetitive: how to set goals, how to set visions, how to set purpose. Those two were really good. There's a lesser known man that I knew named Brian Clemmer. If How-Tos Were Enough, he was a West Point grad. It's not a very sophisticated book. It's a little book. I don't think they print it. You can buy it on eBay. If How-Tos Were Enough, everybody be rich, skinny, and healthy. And it's really just nuts and bolts on how to get goals, how to get visions. And it's not a big book. It's a little book. So,
but it takes drive.
Yeah. So if How-Tos Were Enough, I think, you know, there's a saying, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Everybody might have heard that, and that's from 12-Step, which really took it from the Christian program, and I'm not really Christian, but that right there is really it. Like that was somebody else's book, if you will. It's a 12-step prayer, if you will, but it's like surrender where I don't know what the hell I'm doing, take charge where I can, and be grounded enough or be open enough to know the difference between what I can control and what I can't. I can't control what Trump is doing, but I can certainly position my portfolio.
Good points.
Yeah. And on that note, Toby, if people want to find you, if they want to connect with you, how do they reach out? Where can they find you?
Well, that's a great question because I don't have an internet presence. This is all new to me in public. I've been pretty private. My name's Toby Fisher. I'm in Burlington, Mass. I'm pretty easy to find on Facebook, and my number 781-361-7005. And I'll just make a bold declaration that this year I'll figure out some internet presence because I do believe it is my job to inspire others to live in abundance and in their purpose.
Do you go to meetups? Do you go do any in-person events?
Well, I have been going to the GoBundance ones. I haven't been to the local investment groups in here in a long time. Probably because I haven't been home. I'm not home very much, by the way.
Well,
This man travels.
I travel.
Well, what I'll say, Toby, is, hey, next, if you're ever interested, you're always welcome to be a guest speaker at my Worcester meetup. You have a beautiful story, and I'm sure you inspire a bunch of people there.
Great. I'd be happy to. I'm leaving Saturday. I'll be back in May or April.
Amazing. I will get you on the calendar.
Awesome. All right, everybody. This has been another amazing episode of the Freedom Real Estate Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you next week.
Bon voyage.